Hello YouTube, this is Undis93. Come back at you with a video after a long absence. I've been entirely busy. Um, but I'll try to keep uploading videos, but yeah, really, it's been really busy. But this will be my deck profile of my Chaos Breaker deck post the Stargate booster. Pretty much well, I'll get to that after I show the entire deck of pretty much of how the deck functions now, and basically um, of how it handles against the decks at the moment. But first, we'll start off. We have our main grade 3, which is 4 of Star-vader Chaos Breaker Close. Pretty much definitively, no matter what, you want to write this card. You can use so much advantage of your opponent choosing a card to lock, which, in my opinion, definitively with anything that you do now, pretty much secures that your opponent will pretty much go for units that they don't care about the most, so that you can use your own skills to lock them, which is really good. And then his skill, when something unlocks, once per turn, to kill it and draw, which is really good because he's basically a better original Chaos Breaker. And then we have our new grade 3, which is Star-vader Chaos Breaker Close. He, on Vanguard, he really sucks, just because to lock cards, you have to discard a Star-vader basically to lock a card, which is pretty bad just because he has no way of gaining advantage by himself. But his other skill is pretty much when he's discarded and you have a Heart with Chaos. So either if you discard him for Stride Fodder, or as a Stride Fodder, or if you discard him off of like Deluge, you can Soul Blast and your opponent chooses a card from the hand locks onto the field, which is really good. Because there are times when I have like 2 of these in hand and I go into a Deluge turn where I can get like 4 cards out of my opponent's hand. It's really good, and especially it's going to be good after set 14 if Geese ever decides to be a deck. I'm like, okay, you got 5 of these Aeroth Dragons on field. Discard Close Stride. Soul Blast, lock away, lock a card from your hand over one of these Aeroth Dragons. Deluge, lock 2 more cards over this Aeroth Dragons. Close, lock another card over this Aeroth Dragon. Okay, cool, you got 1 Aeroth Dragon left. And the grade 2s, first we have my Strange Dragon. Personally, I really like this card, and the main reason I run this as a 4 of is this is my most desirable ride target for grade 2, just because of the numbers that I run. But I also like him on rearguard because either he's going to lock a card on the field when he attacks, or he's going to be a 14k attacker, which is really good. And then his GB1 skill is pretty good after the turn he's played, because it pretty much allows him to move back and basically be a booster. Then we have our 3 colony makers. The main reason that I still run Colony Maker is because she has really low costs for what she does of Counterblast if there's a lock card on field. Search my deck for a grade 1 or less. So basically, she lets me retool things out of my deck that I need, like my Zinks, my Meton Axes, my alternate starter if I got rushed down really early in the game. So pretty much just allows me to thin out my deck. Then we have our new grade 2, which is Fierce Attack Star-vader Dubnium. This card is so good. So his first skill is at the end of the turn, I can Soul Blast retire him, and my opponent chooses a card on their field to lock, which is really good because on like grade 2 turns, if my opponent has not gotten rid of their starter, I can display him on rearguard, swing with him, swing with my Vanguard, and then end of turn Soul Blast lock my opponent's starter, which gives a lot of advantage. And then also his GB2. So when he swings, I have when he attacks a Vanguard, and I have Chaos in his card name on my Vanguard. My opponent can choose a card from the hand, lock it on the field, or if they choose not to, he gets plus 10k and I draw. So either way, I'm plussing. So it's either they're locking a card from their hand, which is getting a card out of their hand, or he's getting plus 10k, so my opponent has to guard him more, and I'm also drawing a card. So either way, I'm gaining some form of advantage from this card. Then we have the good old grade 1 Zinc. She, no matter what, this card's going to stay as a 4 of in any Chaos Breaker decks I see going forward, just because she, especially with how the deck's going now, is it eats soul and eats counterblast like no one's business, but mostly soul now. So basically what she does is, basically if there's a lock card on the field and I have a Chaos Vanguard, I chuck her to soul, countercharge soul charge 2. She just gives so much resources for no cost at all. Then we have our Meton axes. Personally, I would like to bump one of these down for a Volt line for the grade 3 turn, but they do what they need to do. So basically, GB1, when it boosts it and there are 2 lock cards on the field, he gets plus 4k and an on-hit skill that if he hits, he Omega locks the card, which is really good because it gives a lot of pressure to my opponent, especially if since it prolongs lock, so I have to get rid of less resources next turn to relock a board. Then we have our 3 Penrose Gates. He's a really good stride fodder. The main good thing about him is once you stride into a Chaos stride, you Soul Blast, you look at top 7 and you add one of your Chaos Breaker targets. So you either add Crisis for your Zeroth Dragon, or you add Close for more locking from hand, or potential stride fodder for next turn, but also gives lock. So he gives so much versatility to the deck because he just, either I'm building towards my Zeroth Dragon turn, or I'm building towards locking more cards out of my opponent's hand. It's really good. And then we also have our 4 Toriums. She's really good PG. Mainly what she does is when she's placed in Guardian Circle, if, she's placed in Guardian Circle, if there are 3 more lock cards on the field, I draw, which is really good, just because majority of the time, unless I'm facing a deck that can get rid of a lot of their cards on their field, from being locked, majority of the time I'm drawing a card, which is really, really good. Then we have our trigger lineup. So I have 4 vanilla Sparkdoll crits, which are one of the 5 cards that are still left in this deck from when I started playing this game. My 4 shiny white Soulettes. My 4 Paradigm Shifts to basically recycle things back to my deck and also lock more cards. And we have our 4 of our new Heal Trigger. Just Heal Trigger is so good. It's because there are people who oh, okay, he has one counter blast. I don't have to worry about anything, or I have no counter blast. And I have a Heal Trigger in my drop zone. It's G-Guard. Cool. I now have another and I have a counter blast to use for next turn. These new Heal Triggers give so much resources just for G-Guarding, especially with the majority of the G-Guards that I use, which is either Desistarian or Destiny Guardian, they don't require counterblast at all. So majority of the time, she's just going to be fronting me counterblast majority of the time, because Soul is easiest resource to build, especially with Zinc being a card. My alternate starter, which is Dusttail. The main reason I run Dusttail, over like Plink Draco Kid is because I have my Penrose Gates to search out my Chaos Breakers, and also for the main reason is that Dustdale refunds me soul, and he also helps out early game, or if I get rushed down early in the game, so I can just lock away a large chunk of my opponent's board. And then my starter is still the same as Carbon. Main reason I still run Carbon as my starter is that he's, in my opinion, the best Star-vader starter that there is definitively, just because there's a lock card. So basically, there's a lock card on my opponent's side of the field. I chuck him to soul. I search my deck for a grade 1 or less Star-vader that's not himself and call it to rear. So the majority of the time, it's either going to be my Zinc, my Dusttail, or my Meton X to either for the on-hit pressure to get back more resources or to lock away more of my opponent's board. And then the G-Zone lineup, currently looking at 2 Death Star Vader Chaos Universe Althany. Pretty much definitively, this will pretty much be my go-to first stride or second stride. Majority of this card is either to 1, lock away my opponent's entire board, or 2, lock away whatever units I have left from my opponent's board, and then get his other skill to go off. So basically, what he does is when he's placed on Vanguard, and I have a Chaos Heart, which no matter what I'll have, I Soul Blast 1. My opponent chooses 2 cards on their field to lock, and if they couldn't lock 2, I draw 2 and I get 2 of my units plus 2. So the majority of the time, depending on what my opponent's board looks like, I will go into this. Like they have like 1 more unit to lock, I'll use his skill, Soul Blast, and gain advantage because I'm drawing 2 cards. Then we still run our 4 universes, because in my opinion, locking cards out of the hand, especially going forward, is a lot better than just locking their board in general, especially with a lot of the resist-based decks walking around. And also hurting my opponent's hand is a lot more beneficial than locking away their entire board, because locking their board is a lot easier to do now than keeping an opponent's board locked is the easy part. The harder part is gunning down an opponent's hand, which is a lot easier to do now, but it also hurts your opponent more. Then we have our 2 Glueballs. Pretty much definitively, I don't really go into the stride much unless I know I can pretty much lock my opponent's entire field down and get 3 really big attacks. Then we have our Amnesty Messiah for the mirror match, which it's pretty much only used for the mirror match, and if it's not really used, if I'm not in a mirror match, this will pretty much be my first flip fodder for Deluge. Then we have our 2 Deluges. This card is pretty much like a second pseudo finisher in the deck, next to Stark, because this card plus Close gets rid of so many cards out of your opponent's hand. So good. So pretty much when he's act Soul Blast, discard a card, flip a card in G-Zone. My opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand, locks onto the field, and then pretty much of the lock cards that are on the field, I choose 1 and I chuck it to my opponent's damage, which the majority of the time it will either be these 2 circles majority of the time, because there's a lot of decks other than like Thavas that can swing for back row. So keeping these 3 spots locked is pretty much the majority of the thing that you want to do. Pretty much throughout the game. But also it depends on what's locked. Pretty much it just comes up to preference, but it's pretty much just depending on what's on the field that you need to get rid of. Like, if you're facing a blaster player, you pretty much no matter what want to send like Barkles and their Flogles to their damage zone, so they also don't get multi-attacks with their Lose and Blaster Blades. So yeah, so this card's so good. Then we have our good old boy Stark. This card in every Zeroth Dragon so far are like great game and finishers, but this card is so hard to fuck up from testing wise. Well, excuse my language, but this card, like, even if your opponent's at 4 damage, they can take 1 hit, but also since I run 12 grits in this deck, the potential of my opponent taking the hit and not getting crit to 6, really high potential. But pretty much the majority of the time I go into this, my opponent's at like 5 damage. So it's either have 3 PGs in their hand, or 2 PGs and like 2 G guards, or die, which is really, really good. Because in testing of 28 games, I've only lost 1 just because of with this is because they had 3 PGs in hand, which I probably should have kept better track of their hand, but it was mostly me just trying to. I think it was like the first day I had Stark, so I was pretty much just like going through a bunch of games. But yeah, I was mostly just trying to get this off as soon as possible. Also, the deck, with how the deck goes now, it's really easy to get to your copy of your Vanguard. We have one Lassus Karina. Pretty much if I go into my second deluge, she's pretty much my second target to flip, mostly due to there's not a lot of decks in the game at the moment until like set 14, where Lassus Karina shines, mostly due to the large amount of like resist decks that are walking around. But after set 14, she'll probably be a lot better. Then we have our 2 Destiny Guardians. Pretty much after Crisis became a grade 3, this card pretty much became infinitely better. Because pretty much the only deck that could really benefit off of this card was Messiahs, which I'm kind of glad, because these things were like $3 when I did pick them up. Now they're like near $40, 40 to $50 now, which is really, really great. So basically what he does, when he's placed on Guardian Circle, I can choose 2 cards on the field, unlock them, and he gets plus 10k shield if I unlock 2. The good thing is, I can use Crisis Skill when the 2 units are locked. I can kill one of them, which majority of the time be whichever unit in their front row I unlocked. So it gives them 1 less attack, and I draw a card. So it just adds so much more advantage. And then we have Desisturgan. Majority of the time, my opponent will have 2 cards locked on the field, and Soul Blast isn't really much of a cost, so it's just a free draw. But from testing against decks that are currently in the meta, Messiahs are a very odd matchup, but it mostly just boils down to, at the moment of killing Messiahs before they get to their integral turn, because pretty much a large chunk of decks really can't really deal with Messiahs once they hit integral, because of the whole I'm shuffling your entire hand back to your deck, you're drawing 5. So it's either you draw a good guard hand or you just die there. Then there's Victor. Victor is kind of like a 50-50 matchup, just depending on pretty much who can get the better first stride turnoff. It's either that Victor's going to either beat your face in, or Chaos is going to lock away their board, so that they have to use resources from their hand to re-unlock their board. Then Asha, it mostly depends on how quickly you can clear away their board for less multi-attacks. Then Big Belly isn't much of an issue. Gridora is also not much of an issue, because the majority of the time when you face Gridora, all you really need is like one column, and you just lock away their board, and that deck is pretty much not an issue. Because you hurt their overwhelm turns, and if they go into off Strandis, it really doesn't affect you, other than you can't call paradigm shifts to send them back to the deck. But other than that, you're completely fine. Then there's what else? And then there's the Voss. The Voss, you pretty much just have the workaround of pretty much locking units that you need to, and keeping track of where their Galaflas are. You pretty much just try to push them into a situation where their Alexandros turns aren't as hard hitting as possible. But but going forward after set 14, in my honest opinion, Chaos is still a very strong deck. It's because none of the decks in set 14, bar like Gear Chronicle with Heritage, which is a minimum a second stride if you G-guard twice, or a third stride, is the only thing that has an access to an unlocker. Because like All Mile, I don't really see doing anything against like Chaos or Victor, because Victor will literally beat that deck's face in, and Chaos are just okay, cool. I just have to deal with your Vanguard now. The only one I really see doing anything is like New Batama, just because of the whole with a lot of their skills going set in 14 is pretty much just making your opponent force call cards from their hand. And what's it called? And Dark Regulars, due to the access of the even more guard restrict, because that deck needed more guard restrict. Yeah, other than that, the so 14 is shaping up pretty well. I don't really see much Geese decks running around. Like, there's probably gonna be someone who's gonna find a way to like break that card or make it good. But at the moment, Geese really isn't that good of a card, mostly due to him. It's a very RNG based card, but yeah, the main thing I see is like, yeah, so I have your Chaos, your Victor, your Shiranui, your Darkness, and then you have like pretty much everything else. But you have like Victor and Chaos near the top, with then like Shiranui and like Charlotte being able to work around those two decks. But yep, that is basically it. So thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day.